How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. Nice to finally get to chat and meet face to face.
I know, it's been a long time coming. We've been chatting on social media for quite some time. A few of my best friends at home, Harley Clifford, Corey Tunison, world champ wakeboarders, were great friends with you during your wakeboard career. So I've heard a lot about you, and we're finally doing it. We've been talking about it for a long time, and yeah, you've got plenty to tell. And yeah, how you going, man?
Yeah, doing good. I mean, it's been a rough couple of years actually, like the last couple of years, just going through some medical issues and health stuff. But finally, at least in the last few months, I've been able to get to the point of actually being up and about and being able to do talks and podcasts and get amongst it again. So that's been cool. But yeah, it's definitely puts things into perspective. Like last year, I spent 3/4 of the year in bed.
Wow.
Just with some medical issues, surgeries and things like that. So yeah, it's just nice to be here and to be up and about.
Love that. I open all my podcasts with a very simple question, something that's very important to me in the Good Human Factory, and that is, what are you grateful for right now in your life?
Well, I think I may have just answered that.
Yeah, I was thinking that while you're saying it.
One thing that I'm definitely grateful for. But yeah, I just in general, I'm just grateful for the position I'm in, being able to share my story openly and be able to positively affect people and influence, whether it's the younger minds with school tours and talks and things like that. But yeah, just being able to share my story and what I've been through and the things I've learnt. And yeah, just think it's a really cool place to be in life, to be able to have a story to tell and a really good following and people that want to hear it. So
yeah, man. Well, we're going to get to hear all about it today. We always open Good Humans podcast with an rep of cheers. This is going to be a little bit different to normal. Anyone listening can't see, but you're quadriplegic. You had a big accident wakeboarding, which we're going to catch up to. So I'm going to come over and give you a sip of your drink, which is going to be new for me. So I'm going to come over. We're going to kick it off with an rep of cheers.
There we go.
Right, so what'd you say? Bottom lip, push down and in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How's that? Get some?
That'll do. Thank you. Actually, let's go a little more.
A little more, of course. All right.
Thank you, sir.
We're on. I'm running back over to my seat.
Had to give the little bit of the instructional beforehand because
I know,
amount
of
the times.
instruction. I mean, I've never given somebody a drink who's got is it quadriplegia? Do you say?
I guess so.
Like
quadriplegia. I don't say that. Use that term very often, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's funny the amount of times I end up with a drink poured down my front. Just so I kind of have to like pause, give the little instructional beforehand, and but it's funny the amount of things that you just take for granted, obviously, but it's interesting throughout the journey. I just find ways to make it work, and just whether it's a little instructional on how to feed me a drink, or just ways to get around little hurdles and limitations. But yeah, it's just part of the journey.
Yeah, well, I love learning about it. I've had a few people with disabilities on the podcast, from Ben Tudhope, who's got cerebral palsy, to a few other athletes who are in wheelchairs, but no one with full body quadriplegia. Quadriplegia is all limbs, paraplegia is just legs.
Yeah. There's a common misconception as well where you get quadriplegics who are able to move their arms, and you get people online, they're like, no, you're a paraplegic. It's like, oh, thank you for telling me my diagnosis.
Yeah.
But no, it's when there's any sort of limitation to the hands or arms, then it falls into quadriplegia. You can even have, there's people up and running, marathons, but they're still a quadriplegic because their body
is all affected.
Is still affected by the injury, just not to the extent of mine. So.
Okay. Well, man, we're going to catch up to it because you've got a very inspiring story to tell, but I want to tell the story before the accident, because not only are you an amazing speaker and have a crazy story to tell, you were one of the best wakeboarders in the world as well. So my podcast runs in an interesting format compared to a lot, and we're going to basically go back to the beginning, talk about childhood, school life, pro wakeboard career, and then we're going to catch up to where we are now. So let's rewind back to the beginning. Where were you born? Family life as a kid? Siblings? What do I need to know about your childhood has shaped you to who you are, let's say, up until high school?
Yeah, so I was born and bred here in Auckland. Had a good upbringing, great family, all of that sort of stuff. And I, in terms of schooling and that sort of thing, I wasn't overly interested in school. I wasn't great at studying. I may have had, ADHD of some sort. Like, I just couldn't stay focused. I just wanted to be outside, playing sports and just learning hands-on. That was sort of my way of learning, is to actually do it and make mistakes and learn it as I go, as opposed to sitting in a room being told what to do. But yeah, enjoyed, played rugby, cricket, all that sort of stuff. Got into even roller hockey. And then, as a family, so my mum was actually one of New Zealand's top water skiers when she was younger, and even went off to the States and, tried pursuing a career in it until she injured herself, and then met my dad, and then kind of took a new path. And so as a family, we'd go water skiing and, biscuiting and kneeboarding and all that sort of stuff. And I used to try to stand up on the kneeboards, and then one family holiday, a friend brought a wakeboard along, and I tried it once, and I never water skied again after that. I just was hooked on wakeboarding. And
how old were you when that was?
I would have been, I think I might have just turned 12.
Okay. So it wasn't like pushed into wakeboarding as a kid, like go pro? Like...
No, I wasn't 5 years old like Harley. I remember my first Worlds, because Harley's a fair amount younger than me. And I remember the first Worlds I went to in Australia, in Penrith, 2003. And I met Harley there, and he must have been only like 6 or 7 years old. But still, he was a phenom then, and obviously continued on with his career to that. So, yeah, I found wakeboarding then and just got into it. A year later, entered my first nationals. My second nationals, I won juniors, and then after that, I stepped up into the open division, even though I was only like 14 or 15 at the time. And just wanted to push myself, and I'd already won juniors, so I just thought hanging in juniors, even though I was still young enough to be there, that didn't excite me. And so yeah, started going up against the bigger names, and that's where I met the likes of Jeff Weatherall, who you know as well, and just others who had taken wakeboarding overseas and taken a career in it. They kind of opened my eyes to that. And and then I was 17 years old, left school a year early, tried going to uni just to keep my parents happy, and then I didn't even make it through the first semester. I got offered a job in the States at a wakeboard camp over there. And I mean, honestly, the paper I was doing, it was just a certificate in sport and recreation, so it was kind of a bullshit paper. I mean, sure, it can lead you to some decent careers, but on its own, it meant really nothing. So I was just like, I would rather learn, to teach wakeboarding and coach, from the best coaches in the world, which was where I was going, than get some half-assed paper that doesn't really mean much. And Mum, obviously, having done that journey doing that herself, she was supportive, but also quite hesitant, as parents will be. What about plan B? Or you got to have some sort of backup plan or something to fall back on. But no, I took off and went there for my first summer and won Junior Worlds at the end of that year, and that was pretty much what started me
kicked off the career.
Back-to-back summers for 10 years after that.
Wow. Yeah, it just fascinates me, the upbringing that you guys have when you're spending half the year in America and Florida and living that wakeboard life. Like, it's so cool. I look at Corey and Harley and just go like, such an interesting way to live. What was it like for you once you won that Junior World title? That's one thing that Harley said to me, is like, yeah, he won a couple of Junior World title, and that was where it kicked off. Yeah. What once you won that Junior World title, what did you think the sort of next, were you like, all right, pro wakeboarding, getting sponsors, getting the next few years of my life really going harder? Like, you're on the world tour and stuff, I'm guessing. And
I was on the junior tour at that point, or trying to be on the junior tour, and actually even after winning Worlds two years in a row in juniors, there was the following year I ended up missing out on the junior pro tour, and I had, in my book I talk about damage control, I think it's called, as the chapter, where I just basically, it's injury after injury throughout that one season, from putting my back out to breaking my leg, breaking my foot, splitting my chin open, like all sorts. And then it was just a hectic season. But yeah, there were struggles. It wasn't like, win a couple of junior world titles and then all the sponsors came behind me and it was all smooth running from there. But it was always a challenge, and I always found I was kind of a step or two behind the rest in terms of the support I was getting. And even like, as I said, I had a good upbringing. My parents were great, really supportive, but they didn't like hand me everything. They didn't go out and buy us a wakeboard boat. Like, I never had a wakeboard boat throughout my whole career. And that was something, you're going up against kids in the States that have grown up living on the side of the lake, got the boat on the end of the dock, mum and dad's gas card. All they have to worry about is their actual training. Whereas for me, it's worrying about everything else just to get to the training and that sort of thing. So it was still a struggle, and but I was having a lot of fun along the way. Made some good friends over in the States, and actually, I don't know, if you did much traveling with your surfing, but like when you're overseas, generally Kiwis and Aussies kind of tend to bond together, and so we had a really cool group of friends that we'd ride together with and push each other, and it was just it was really great camaraderie that was kind of built over that time. But then, moving forward to like 2008, I became the fourth person in the world to land a 1080.
Yes, I knew about this.
And
that
then,
was my next question.
Yeah, and then around the 1080, that was like one of these huge moments that I'd pushed myself toward, and really, I thought that was going to be the moment that would really accelerate everything, get the sponsors on board. And I was the first in the world to land a regular stance 10. And the three guys who did it before me were Parks Bonifay, Danny Half, and Rusty Malinowski. So absolute legends that I'd looked up to the whole time, and I was kind of this unknown kid out in New Zealand to land it. And so news of it spread like wildfire, and it was, everyone in the industry was really hyped about it, but it was in 2008, and it wasn't a great year for the economy, and all sponsorship budgets kind of dried up, and I'd even been promised a contract and getting on the international team with Oakley, but then there was crickets. They didn't even follow through. And then next thing, I land the 1080. They answer my first phone call. Oh yeah, buddy, awesome, congrats, blah blah blah. But then, oh sorry, we can't follow through with the contract. So there was a lot of like big build-ups and letdowns like that throughout the career. But I kind of obviously look back at moments like that, and they kind of they help build our resilience, I guess. If you get knocked down and can show that you can get back up, then you tend to become stronger because of it. And so yeah, there were a lot of challenges like that, injuries along the way, but it's part of the journey, and I think part of what's sort of made me into who I am today.
Yeah, it's coming from like New Zealand being such a small economy, such a small country, it makes it so hard for you guys to cut through, and then for you to even be the fourth in the world to land the 1080, the first to land that other trick, with the upbringing, like you said, you didn't have the boat on the dock, you didn't have the support. You should be so proud to have been able to achieve what you did in wakeboarding. And then tell me about the you won best trick, didn't you, for the year? And that's a trick that once after brought it all apart.
Yeah. And so
tell me about that trick and what the build up was to that, what the what that meant to you.
Yeah, so we're jumping forward to 2014. I mean, there were some other sort of, firsts along the way. There's, I did the world's first water-to-water step-up, where I found like a spillway that I, jumped up and over. And then there was, a few other firsts along the way. But the main one was that Indy double tantrum to blind. So basically a Indy, grab Indy, double backflip, and then a backside 180 rotation. Sort of like, I think, what would it be called? Like a double backside rodeo, I think.
Yeah. I know what a double backside. It's like holding the rope, coming in on your heel side, and then turning your back to the wake, doing a double backflip with an Indy.
Yeah.
And then twisting out, so you have to land switch with
backwards.
Backwards, which you're a psycho.
And it was, it was over a mega ramp as well. So this was a new direction in wakeboarding that.
So it wasn't a wake to wake. It was off a. Was it cable or was it behind a boat?
So on a 2.0 cable. So, and that's where cable allows us to do sort of multiple level riding. You're not just limited to the flat plane of a lake. You can then build a pond on a elevated peninsula and kind of have a land gap and up and down rails. And
it's far more accessible for someone like you who doesn't have a boat and doesn't have the access to a boat off the edge of your dock all the time.
And at that point, so Lake Roanoke had come about, which is, my board sponsor, Roanoke Wakeboards, bought this property in Florida. And I was back in New Zealand and I heard about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go there. I'm going to live there, manage the place. Didn't tell them that. And then just went there and got to work and then got offered the position to do that. And so now I had, now I had this, 2.0 cables in my backyard. I had, one of only 2 mega ramps in the world was there in my backyard. And so we got to do a lot of training on that, which was cool. And it was because I loved going big and I'd already blown my knee out and I'd already had some injuries from just hard landings behind the boat. And so this was a way that you could go massive and then land, down a landing ramp. And so kind of, give us the ability to push ourselves a bit more. And so that's where a lot more of the double flips and stuff were coming into play. And, and so I'd been just through practicing and I'd landed a double flip over the mega ramp. And then I got offered an invite to Red Bull Rising High. In Germany, and so it's the only other mega ramp in the world. And so me and a couple of the teammates went over to that, and it was during practice that I landed the double tantrum to blind. I just had my double tantrums dialed, and my buddy Brenton Priestley was just he was there and he's just amping me up. He's like, go to blind, you can do it, blah, blah. And it only took me 4 or 5 attempts. I managed to stick it, and I just remember then knowing I was going to win Trick of the Year. And there was a goal I'd had since I even knew that was a thing.
It's got goosebumps.
Yeah, and it was, I just, knew that was going to happen. I remember, someone like Parks Bonifay being there, just being so hyped on what I'd just done. And this is, the biggest legend, biggest name in the sport. And for him to come up and tell me that I'd just landed the craziest trick in wakeboarding that had ever been done was pretty huge, to hear that. And then, one Trick of the Year at the Wake Awards, but unfortunately I was already in the spinal unit at that point, and had to watch my brother and Jeff Weatherall go up and accept the award for me. So, I mean, it's just the definition of bittersweet right there, it's gnarly. So the accident itself was when I was back in Florida a week or so after the event. We'd actually just been filming with Nitro Circus. Travis Pastrana had come out, and Street Bike Tommy and a bunch of the crew. And I remember I did a double flip over Travis, and he was standing on the landing ramp. And then it was only a few days later that, we were filming for a movie called Prime, and it was our last day of filming, and I just put a lot of pressure on myself because I was like, okay, I've already landed the double flip for it, but, all the footage needs to be done at Lake Roanoke. So the trick in Germany wasn't going to count for that. But people knew I'd already landed that trick. So there was this expectation there that only me, I was the only one that put that expectation there, but I thought that that's what everyone would be thinking. That it needed to be the final banger for that movie section. And I just, tried it over and over again and was getting closer and, slipping out on it a few times and just getting a bit frustrated. And I just, felt like I needed to go a bit bigger and just cut harder, pushed a bit harder off the ramp and just went way bigger than what I thought. And, with a double flip, you sort of grab and tuck, and, when you tuck in, it speeds up the rotation and you can open out to slow it down. So that was halfway through the first flip. If I open out, that was my bailout point where I was like, okay, I can still, pull this back to a single flip if something felt wrong, which was also how I learned to do a double flip, was just open out early, know that I've got enough time to then, if I stay tucked, then I could do a double. And it just felt wrong off the top of the ramp, and I opened out, but I just opened out a bit too late and knew it was going to go horribly wrong. Still had line tension, with the handle holding onto the rope. So I tugged really hard on that to turn the flip rotation into a spin. And I almost saved it. I got my board back onto the ramp, but I was 90 degrees short of, actually landing the way I was supposed to. So I had my toes facing down the ramp as opposed to the nose of the board. So I basically came rolling forward, and I tried to tuck and roll, to tuck my head and shoulders under, but it was just too late. Didn't have enough time to really get the push off with my legs to be able to roll. So my head went down and the top of my shoulders smashed into the landing ramp and forced my head down into my chest and just exploded my C4 vertebrae. And it was all chaos from there.
Yeah, wow, man. It's like you said, that bittersweet feeling of like achieving what you've always wanted to. Best trick of the year, best trick ever probably done wakeboarding at that time, probably still to this day.
Well, there's a few that have done it. Harley as well and Corey both have done it behind the boat, and there's a
double tantrum to blind.
Yeah, and another
Harley was telling me
gnarly.
it's like the scariest trick that he's ever done.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly, and there's one of my old teammates as well has done it over a mega ramp too. So yeah, it's still up there, but no, it was a pretty cool achievement.
Yeah, so let's talk about you stack this trick. How much memory do you have of that day and the following days? Because I've spoken to a few other friends who have broken their neck. No one that's ended up quadriplegic, but Sam Tate is Australian.
Yeah, I know Sam, yeah.
Yeah, legend. He's been on the podcast. Another pro surfer, Josh Muniz, broke his neck surfing but made a full recovery. So there's obviously a lot of different things that can happen when we break our neck, but you've obviously had a full spinal cord sever. Is that what it is?
Not sever, but a full crush.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, if you picture like squeezing a banana, and it just like completely mushes it and crushes it, but it's still somewhat intact.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's thankful that it's not a full sever, because it means, there's still the possibility of, things reconnecting, and maybe it's better for, whatever treatments might come up. And but yeah, it's pretty final, it's quite definite in terms of an injury.
Yeah, so let's talk about those following couple weeks. What was that like?
Well, I mean, immediately after the accident, so I was unconscious, and I woke up, and I like to make the joke. So Dean Smith and Chad Sharp, who actually Chad and I a few months earlier had done a water safety course, just because I was managing the property. We had a lot of gnarly stuff going on out there. Chad, was out there every day as well, and so I figured we should probably do this just in case. And part of that was actually stabilizing a spinal cord injury in the water.
Wow.
So Chad was there on the day, and they flipped me over when they got to me. I was blue in the face, eyes wide open. Dean, his first thought was that I was already dead. And they had a paddleboard there with them, and kind of half pulled me up on that to try to do CPR. And I like to make the joke that I must have known one of the boys was about to put his mouth to mine, because I woke up and started breathing on my own. And then it was just tingles and it wasn't pain as such, but it just couldn't feel or move anything. And I'd had an injury before where it was just whiplash, and I was knocked unconscious and woke up unable to move, but it all came back within about 30 seconds. So that was my first thought. Okay, this will come back, just stay calm. And then as time went on, it's just, no, can't feel this, can't feel that, can't move anything. First responders got there, put a neck brace on me, put me on a backboard, got me in the helicopter, sent me off to hospital. And I remember one of the boys actually, Chad was on the phone. He said something about, you probably have to bring in the helicopter. And I just turned to him. I'm like, don't you bring in that fucking helicopter. It's going to be so expensive. I had no insurance, nothing. My travel insurance had run out at that point, because I'd just got a 5-year visa.
Yeah, okay.
So it was my first time actually getting a proper visa where I can earn money. And
it's hard to get travel insurance if you've got a visa like that, because normally travel insurance is like trips or like round trips and like full time.
There's a limit of time that they can do.
Somewhere.
And so my travel insurance had run out, and I was starting to look into my options over there, like Obamacare or whatever, what was the best option. And so I had nothing at that point, so I was freaking out about money. But then obviously they called it in, and I got sent off to the hospital and went in for an MRI, and then I don't really remember, like a vague recollection of a couple of the boys being there. I think it was Brenton and Chris O maybe, and a couple of the Aussie boys, and they they were there, and I was just laying in the room and just going like, why did I back out? And then there's about a week, maybe 5 days blank that I just do not remember. And so I'd had a 9-hour surgery, like 2 rods, a plate, 14 screws put in my neck, a cadaver vertebrae from what I was told. So, donated by a deceased person. And then I woke, apparently I was awake and alert during that time, but I just don't remember it. Whether it was from the surgery or from the impact, like trauma in general, or the drugs.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and it was just the darkest thoughts. Didn't want to be there. Wished my friends had left me in the lake. Like, just couldn't comprehend or couldn't possibly think a life would be worth living without my physical ability. And managed to turn that mentality around just with the support of friends and family, seeing fundraisers happening, and just the community rallying around me was just really what helped me switch things around and decide to fight. But I was on a ventilator. I had pneumonia. We were trying to wean me off the ventilator a few weeks after the accident, and my heart stopped on one of the occasions, the second day trying to breathe off the ventilator. And so again, that was pretty spooky. I had to be fully resuscitated, and Mum was in the room watching that. And that's probably one of the hardest moments to kind of recall, is waking up and seeing my mum's face right there, and just the fear in her eyes. And I really struggled with that for a long time, and the guilt around that, and the guilt that that I carried, and that lasted for quite a long time. I couldn't look her in the eyes properly. Like, it just, I could see it reflecting back, and it just hurt, man.
When you say it hurt, what were some of the things going through your head? Like, oh fuck, I didn't have travel insurance, or fuck, I'm going to be a burden now to my family. Like,
that was it. The burden feeling, just going, what have I put these people through? My family, friends, loved ones, everyone. It's like, I'm just going to be a burden on them. They're going to have to be, they're going to all have to change their lives because of what I've done. And that was kind of the thoughts that were going through my head. And that was one of the hardest chapters to write about in my book. But actually, it's one of the ones I'm most proud of in terms of what actually came through, and how I was able to describe that journey. Because I had a girlfriend at that point it's funny, I won't go too much into it, but like, we'd already called it off like a week before, and then she rushed to my side because obviously just that fear of losing someone, and then that actually ended before I even came back to New Zealand. But she was also someone that was there when I needed her, so I got through 5 weeks in the ICU, managed to start eating and breathing on my own again, or just at least starting with that. And then it was, I think, once I got shipped up to Shepherd Center up in Atlanta, which is a big spinal unit up there, only took me a couple of weeks to get off the ventilator. Then we got the pneumonia cleared, and they just set me a target. They're like, you have to do, I think it was 16 hours a day for like 3 or 4 days in a row off the ventilator, and then they put me back in the ICU to be watched, sleeping without the ventilator on. And then all they had to do was set me a goal. That was it. Like, if you can give me that target, I'll do everything I can to work toward it.
Got 2 questions. What was the first thing you heard from a doctor that I guess scared you? Because I feel like quite often I've had guests on that have been to hospital, and doctors are so unoptimistic. What sort of response did you have from the doctors once you first they started talking to you about what had happened to you, what the future looks like for you, and how'd that affect you?
1 to 2% chance of ever moving my upper limbs again. No mention of walking or anything like that. So that was the first thing. Also, I thought my doctor was an absolute dickhead. He barely even acknowledged me. Everything was, even though I was there in the room, I was alert. I was, my brain was working fine. He's saying all these things and just so brutal, and saying it to my parents and everyone around me, but not really saying it to me. And And I get it. They have to be realistic about it. That, you know, and at that time, all I wanted was this bubble of positivity.
Bit of compassion, yeah.
But no, it was brutal. But it was also part of what made me go, okay, well, challenge accepted.
Fuck this guy.
1% to 2%. All right, I'll take that, you know, and see how I go with those odds. But yeah, that was one of the things. You know, the doctors were pretty brutal.
And can you explain to me why you have to be on a ventilator? It's something that I'm sure everyone listening has the same curiosity as me, and we've obviously heard a lot more the last couple of years with COVID, the importance of ventilators. Why do you have to be on a ventilator? And what part of your injury was restricting your breathing?
Yeah, so I think, I can't remember what it is, they say something like C3, 4, 5 survive or something like that, which is basically like those are the levels of injury where you might be able to start breathing on your own again. But what it does is that level, you know, the higher up the spinal cord, the more it shuts down in your body.
More connected to the brain it is, yeah.
Yeah, and so with C4 level injury, you know, I've got a shoulder shrug, but nothing in my biceps or anything to move my arms. But it takes away all my core strength, you know, the control around the diaphragm. So my exhale is terrible. Like if I try to cough, it's like wow. There's no power behind it. Also, my laugh is silent now. I don't have abs squeezing. Sneezes.
Like I don't tell too many jokes.
Sneezes are like little mousy little like. So yeah, it's just that all of the muscles around, you know, the rib cage and around the core aren't working anymore. So you then have to kind of build that strength again. And so yeah, I was able to do that. And then it's funny, like where I've taken that now with like my lungs and my ability with that. We'll get up to that, but yeah, it's just, again, it's something that it was a slow journey to get there. But then once they took that ventilator or the tracheotomy piece out of my neck, and then the hole closes, it only takes a few days. And then I was just, 100% breathing on my own again. And also the reason you can't eat and drink while you're on a ventilator is they inflate a balloon above the hole that they put in your neck so that the air just doesn't gush out through your mouth the whole time when the ventilator is trying to pump your lungs up.
Okay.
So you can't swallow. I had to have anything suctioned out of my mouth. So any saliva, anything like that, you're just not allowed to swallow.
And you were just fed through like IV or through?
Yeah, just through my nose.
Okay.
Like a feeding tube in through my nose.
So you're up in Atlanta, you're in this spinal. What sort of cost did they start to anticipate? How was that to deal with without insurance? I'm sure it's probably in the millions with heli, with weeks in hospital, maybe not millions, but...
I don't know what it would have come to, but we got very lucky. So in New Zealand, we've got ACC, which is accident compensation. They help you, if you get injured. If you're traveling, you've got up to 6 months. Within that period, you're still covered by ACC.
Wow.
Outside, and even if you've planned on being out of the country for more than 6 months, you're not covered anymore. So I wasn't actually going to be covered, but I found this basically somewhat of a legal loophole, which meant, because I was being paid by Ronix back into my New Zealand account, it meant I had a taxable income in New Zealand, paid my ACC levies and everything. But like the ICU stay was going to be, I think it was only the first bill that came through was like 130 grand. And it was weird. Then we told them we didn't have insurance, and then it came back on non-insurance discount. Now it's only 30 grand, which just shows how messed up the insurance situation. Over there. It's absolutely fucked. And so but that got covered by Florida Medicaid, and which I was surprised. I'm like, most probably citizens don't get covered by this shit, whereas I was for some reason. So that was amazing. And then the stay at Shepherd Center was going to be at least 350 grand US. But, and I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think someone told me like Danny Half's sister, her partner may have known someone on the board. Basically, they was able to send a letter in, and they have a couple of scholarships they give away each year to be covered. And so I got a scholarship, got covered with everything. And the amazing thing was, obviously we'd had all this money raised expecting all these medical bills. But a lot of it got covered. And so it meant that the money raised didn't just disappear into those bills, and it meant it could help me build a future for myself, which was amazing, and I'm really grateful that I had that support to be able to do that, because it's put me in a lot better situation now, and where I'm not just constantly worrying about the costs and everything around this, because there are still a lot of costs, even though I am covered.
Yeah. Let's talk about mindset now. So your book's called Owning It. The mindset that you kind of alluded to from when the doctor said you've got 1% to 2% chance, you're like, fuck this. Where do you think that mindset came from? And do you think, because I feel like some people would give up, but then there's kind of two sides of the pendulum. It sounds like you really went all in on this. You know what sort of quality of life can I get back? So let's talk about how that mindset kicked in, and then the trip back to New Zealand and that first sort of assimilation back into life with a very, very life-changing disability.
Yeah, well, I mean, the trip back home and everything, like all those adjustments, because I had another few months in spinal unit when I got back home, and then managed to move out into the community. And honestly, it took me about 3 years to the point where I felt the positive shift. At first it was just fight for everything you got, go, rehab, whatever, like I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to get moving again. But that didn't happen. The movement didn't come back. And then, so there was this point where I was so focused on everything that I couldn't do, everything I used to have that I don't have anymore, everything I'm ungrateful about with my life. And I was so focused on this that it sent me into this pretty dark depression. And I think the ability to kind of come back from that came from all of the adversity throughout my career, the ups and downs and injuries and setbacks, and being able to push through those. I think those were kind of starting to give me the tools that I needed, but also the support that I had from a friend, this woman named Susie, who came in and basically became somewhat of a life coach. Like, she's a kinesiologist, owns the Pilates studio that I used to go to for physical conditioning and coming back from injuries before breaking my neck. So she came in and just started coming to see me every week, and we just talk about what needed to be talked about. Guilt was one of them, about feeling guilty around being able to look in, not being able to look in mum's eyes, and that sort of stuff. So we addressed things that would just come up, and she was one of the main reasons I was able to turn things around, just with helping me learn about things like belief systems and being present, and what true acceptance is. I thought I had to accept everything I believed my injury meant, and all these future-based fears that I thought were going to happen, and no woman's ever going to want me, I'm never going to have fun and adventure, and blah, 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 I'm going to be a burden on everyone. And I thought I had to accept that, but all I had to accept is what is right here, right now, and that's, yes, I broke my neck, and I'm in a wheelchair, but all the stuff about future, I had to remove that in order to get to a point of acceptance. And that was sort of where that turnaround point happened, and I'm like, okay, what am I grateful for? What can I do? What possibilities are there out there for me? And so that was really where things changed. But I guess the term owning it, that just came from, the acceptance part. Again, I felt even acceptance felt a little bit submissive. It wasn't empowering. It wasn't something that I felt I could really grab onto and something empowering. So I use the analogy, it's like, before taking on acceptance, it was like I was swimming against the current in a river, trying to get back to where I used to be and everything I used to have. And I'm just, I spent 3 years fighting, swimming. And by that point I felt like I was drowning. And acceptance is just flowing with the river in the direction life's taking me, just not fighting it.
Not focusing on what you can't do, focusing on what you can do.
Yeah, just going with it. But then I was like, no, I need more than that. I need something that I can really be proud of and kind of grab onto. And so I was like, okay, no, I'm not just going to accept this, I'm going to own it, which meant basically taking everything that my life is, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything, and just move forward with that as, okay, this is who I am. But really who I am is what I have control of. And so having a good idea of control, it's not what my parents passed down to me in my genetics. It's not what has happened to me in my life. It's what I have control of. And I think it comes down to three main things, like attitude, effort, and action. And so, when it comes to self-love and acceptance and self-belief, I think those are the things we need to focus on, because spending too much time focusing on the things out of our control is just going to drive us crazy. It's going to put our mental state in conflict with our reality. And I found owning it as the phrase that just, I was like, okay, what can I do with this life, and how can I be the best version of myself that I can be? And part of that was getting into motivational speaking, sharing my story really openly, and then obviously the journey with writing my book and sharing my story openly through that. Very, very openly. Had a few messages like, whoa, that was a bit much. And my mum like skimming over a few pages, like, sexual encounters and stuff like that. But no, it was all part of the journey of finding myself again and finding a place where I could then feel like I can work from, as opposed to feeling like a victim and everything's happened to me. So, okay, let's just
still bring value to the world.
Yeah, let's just kind of find a point where I can actually find a good place within myself and actually, move forward and be of value and have some purpose and that, because I think, purpose is super important.
It's going to be 3 categories that we're going to talk about to finish. We've still got plenty of time. First one, motivational speaking, something that you're doing a lot now. What are the key takeaways? What do people get out of when you come and speak to them? Is it though? Do you talk about those 3 words that you said before, which I forgot?
Attitude, effort, action.
Attitude, effort, action. Let's talk about what those 3 mean to you, and what your keynote's about.
Yeah, so I mean, the keynote's basically the shortened version of what my book is.
Yeah.
I do talk about a little bit from before the accident, talk about the 1080, talk about how failing along the way is actually part of the journey to success, and we need to remove the stigma around failing because it can make you too afraid to even take that first step.
Fail forward always.
And it's if you fail, you learn about it, you keep going, and
it's only a failure if you give up.
Exactly. And so that's where I had to, with the 1080, it took me, hundreds, if not thousands of tries. And so, I talk about that. I talk about some of the things around leadership that I learned at Lake Ronix, and how sometimes, a little bit of short-term sacrifice can lead to long-term gain for us. But then I really hone in on sort of the mental side of things, and mainly it's around what we have control of, because so many of us are trying to control things that are out of our control, and like people's opinions of us, we have no control of that. Like, we have a bit of influence on that, and that's only through our attitude, our effort, and our actions. And so we can influence that, but we have no control of it. And so for me, it was about finding that. I talk about, depending on the audience, if it's for younger sort of school kids, then I won't go into things like metacognition and belief systems and stuff as deeply, but I will still talk about them in terms of, how important it is to be aware of our thoughts and our mind and what we start believing. If you truly believe that having a Lamborghini is going to make you happy, then if you don't have a Lamborghini, then you're never going to be happy. B, you're going to get to that point and you're going to realize that actually this doesn't bring happiness. It may bring short-term joy, but in terms of that baseline level of happiness that we have, being able to improve that, I think, comes from a really good understanding of A, what we have control of, and B, what our values are and our beliefs, and being able to adjust and adapt those to fit with our reality. Because again, if we expect something or that is so far out of reach, but we expect it to happen, then again we're in conflict with reality. So it's great to have goals, it's great to have things to strive for, but having them as ones that we can achieve along the way, so you get that kind of roll-on effect, you get the confidence that comes from it, as opposed to constantly feeling like you're not good enough. And that's the thing with, if you can switch your belief systems from, okay, I'm going to be happy if I have a Lamborghini, versus I'm going to be happy if I find a good place within myself, like if I am able to get into a good relationship or whatever it is. Like, things that are actually a lot more meaningful. You know, as we get older, we start to realize what's a lot more important.
You know, like values-based living rather than achievement-based living. And a good one that you'll like, this is what I talk about a lot in my workshop with my gratitude stuff, is my dad always said to me, appreciation, not expectation. And it stuck with me forever. And we always fall into the expectation trap. But the more that we can bring it back to that, all right, appreciate the journey, appreciate what I've already got, because we're never going to get everything we want. No. So it's like, when can you be happy with what you have?
Yeah. And that kind of, I guess, crosses over with one I use in my talks, which is when we're looking at what other people have, comparison is the killer of joy. Like, we can't base our value and our happiness on what other people have. And if we're looking at what other people have, rather than drawing comparison, draw inspiration or motivation toward what we can do to achieve the goals we want. But that whole grass is greener approach, you know, and thinking and even focusing on anyone else's grass is pointless. It's not going to make our grass any greener. We've just got to put the work in ourselves and tend to our own lawn, and do the work on making our grass as green as
grass is
we
green
can.
Where you water it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next little bit I want to talk about your book. I've got a copy. I told you yesterday, I feel terrible I haven't read it yet. It's bloody long.
It is daunting.
But the beautiful thing about how long it is, and everyone listening has to go and buy it, because I'm going to paint the picture. You've got quadriplegia, like you said, you've got a little bit of a shoulder shrug. Other than that, it's just your head that basically works.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be like quite frank with disability. I'm learning that like you don't want to get treated differently. Like
No.
it is what it is. So paint the picture. Your arms are just sitting on your chair. The rest of your body doesn't work. You wrote your whole book with a little stick in your mouth, and you wrote it yourself. I said, why don't you just talk to someone and get them to write it? And you said, that took away the challenge. It's one thing that I can do. Yeah. Tell me about the decision to write it yourself. Tell me how long it took you, and tell me what it meant to you to write your story and be able to share it with people.
Yeah, so it took me 6 years from start to finish. And I just started writing just because I remember these recollections came back around the morning that I woke up after that 5-week blank after my accident. And it was so vivid and in my mind, and there was like things like smells, and you know, like the smell of fresh brewing coffee like was one thing, and the sun beaming through the window and things like that. And so I just started writing about it. And
when you say writing, you're with your mouth, one letter at a time, touching on a keyboard with your little stylus? Mouth
stick stylus. And so at that time it was one key at a time. So I was like a little woodpecker, basically picking at my phone all day. And so I had to get physio on my neck every week and on my jaw.
Bloody 650-page book.
Yeah, it's I wrote almost 500,000 words for my first draft, and that's the book's just, I think, under half of that. And that was more of an indication of the fact that I have no idea how to write a book. I just brain dumped my whole story. And so I started writing about it. And then thankfully, after a year or so, Apple updated their software so that you can do a swipe to text. So I was just swiping it. It must have doubled my word count per minute.
Like kind of one letter and just pull around.
And so that helped speed things up. And I was just kind of working away at it with, I didn't even know where it was going to end. I thought maybe I'd be walking by the end of it or something, but it was a few years later that a good friend of mine's partner, who is an editor, and she actually ended up becoming my editor, she reached out to a publisher and just said, hey, look, you should check this guy out. I think the decision came based off like my Instagram and Facebook posts and just the captions I'd write, and just, they were like, okay, he's got a cool style of writing. I had no idea that I was any good at writing.
Being honest and vulnerable.
Yeah, I just, even my English teacher would probably be stunned to know that I became a best-selling author. So then that came about. I signed the publishing deal, and that's when, we had deadlines, and I must have pushed my deadline back like 6 or 7 times.
I think you've got a pretty good, not excuse, but you've got a pretty good reason to.
And so, then COVID happened, and then I was on bed rest as well. And so that allowed me to really focus in on finishing it. And I got the first draft finished, and it took us about a year to go through editing and proofreading to get it down to what it is. And it's just one of those things that I just am really proud of doing it myself, because I could have taken the easier option, but it was just a challenge I wanted to take on. And also how openly and vulnerably I've shared my story, because it allows people to connect. It's like I don't know, there's so many athlete biographies are very vanilla because they are too afraid to be judged or to ruin their reputation. I honestly didn't care. I was like, I talk about the fact that I used to sell weed in order to fund my wakeboard career, the fact that I used to be a bit of a womanizer, but I had to paint that picture of the life before, so that then, so people understood the struggles along the way and how, challenging the journey was, but then also how that related to everything afterwards, when it came to what sex is like as a quadriplegic, and the struggles and mental battles around that, and challenges, and how that actually led to me ruining the first relationship I had after the accident, was because I was not in a good place around, intimacy and things like that. I was off. The fantasy of what what it used to be, and chatting online with, removing the reality of my injury, that to me, that fantasy felt better than what reality was. And so so I had to learn the hard way with that. But I just wanted to tell my truth, to tell my story very openly, and just, like the biggest thing with the learnings afterwards that Susie helped me through, which she was amazing, like it really helping me find a great place within myself. I really wanted to hone in on those, and almost, because some of these like self-help guru, power of now type books, they are a bit of a leap to get to that. It's quite a guru sort of feeling.
It takes a lot of reflection and honesty with yourself before any of this self-help stuff works.
Yeah, and it's to get to that. Well, I tried reading some of these books. I'm like, I can't connect with this. So I wanted to create these stepping stones along the way, so take people on that journey a bit easier. And really, I just wanted people to learn what I've learned without going through what I've been through. And obviously, you can't learn it to the full extent without the experience, but to be able to start to and to get some of those tools, I guess, I think the main thing is, for me, it's like it is it's a continual journey. Mental health is a continual journey. It's not something you ever get to the point of, yes, I'm completely happy and everything's going to be great from here on out. We'll always come across struggles. We'll always battle with things. And for me, it's just having little reminders. It's like a little notification that pops up on your phone. If I feel a certain way, I'm aware of it, and then I can recruit the tool that I've learned, and then I can get over that thing a lot quicker. It's not like adversity doesn't happen anymore. It's just I'm better at dealing with it.
Yeah. So
I wanted to provide the tools for everyone to take away.
I love that. And I think my definition, and I think this should be the definition of good mental health, is just your ability to bounce back from those hard times. It's not avoiding hard times. It's having the capacity to absorb, reflect, assess your situation, and make action. Like your 3 words go, which I've forgotten again, but I remember the last one was action.
Attitude, effort, action.
Attitude, effort, action. It's our attitude towards the situation, how much effort we're willing to research and look for solutions, and then actually actioning it and staying disciplined to do it. Whereas most people run into a situation and become the victim, put the blame on, find the excuses. But it's like, what's happened to me, it's how can I respond to it. And it sounds like your situation has evolved from that resentment, that what am I going to do with my life, like this is fucked, to okay, what can I do? It's really inspiring to see.
Thanks, man. And it's life's still difficult. It's it's challenging every day, but it's I feel like I'm at a good place where I can deal with that and bring things back to what I can control. And just that whole victim mindset, the thing I like is, if we own something, we can fix it. If we push it away and it's not ours, then we can't do anything about it. So I think that's one of the really important things. I just hated that idea of being a victim and things being out of my control and things happening to me. So
Man, and it's so cool. Like now, this is the last bit I want to talk about, what you're up to, some of the goals you've got going. Before I do that, I want to me kind of explain it first, but then you explain it.
Yeah.
Your wheelchair and how you get around is fucking incredible. So can you explain how because people are probably like, oh, someone pushes him around in his wheelchair. You've got an electric wheelchair that you operate yourself with just your mouth.
Yeah.
And your neck and your head. Can you explain how it works? You've got a little tube that you blow and suck into that turns you left and right, speeds you up, reverses you.
Yeah.
It's fucking cool.
So it's called a sip and puff control. So it's actually more commonly used in the States, whereas when I came back to New Zealand with it, there weren't many people using them here, whereas now, I guess because I go to the spinal unit and I do, volunteer peer support work there, a lot of the other patients that are coming out with my level of injury are now using a sip and puff control because they can see how it works and they can see the benefits versus like a head-driven thing where, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, so if I puff hard, it drives forward and it latches forward, so I don't have to keep puffing in order to drive it forward. If I puff for a longer period of time, it accelerates longer, and then it just keeps driving at the speed when I stop puffing. And then if I puff softly, it turns right. If I sip softly, it turns left. And then if I sip hard, it stops or slows down. But if I continually, sip, then it stops.
Have you ever had a malfunction?
Yep. Yeah, I haven't come out of my chair yet, but I've come very close. I've crashed into a few things. I put my feet through the wall inside the chiropractor's rooms once. It didn't respond as quickly as I needed it to. And the hard thing is, if I'm trying to puff softly to turn right to avoid something, if I puff a little too hard, then I accelerate at the thing I'm trying to avoid. So that was one of the first crashes. I remember Jeff Weatherall was with me, and I ended up crashing into a wall because I didn't puff softly enough. And then I've got a head button that I tap the button and it moves to the chair controls where I can tilt the chair back. I can raise the level of the chair up, so if I'm in a crowd at a concert, I can still be able to see and be at eye level. So yeah, it's amazing the technology we've got to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's like the best time, I guess, in history to have had the injury you have, but
yeah.
Not what you'd wish on anyone. But the last bit I want to talk about is what you've been up to now outside of obviously your speaking, what your quality of life looks like. There's two little bits actually. I want to finish with that as a positive note. Tell me about what's been going on the last couple of years. You said you've had some challenges, just to give people a bit of an idea of what you're dealing with day to day that come with the injury, obviously.
Yeah, so as short as possible, I can explain. So obviously, we all went through COVID. Toward the end of that time of lockdowns and everything, about 2 years ago, I started feeling this pain, sitting pain. And it got worse and worse and worse throughout the year. We did everything to try to figure out what it was. X-rays, MRIs, CT scans. So
you still have feeling and stuff below your body, you just can't move them.
Yeah, it's not external feeling. So if someone touches my leg, I can't feel it. But if something hot were to be on my leg, after about 20 seconds, I could probably feel it. Okay. So there's a certain amount of internal feeling that I've got. But unfortunately, most of it's negative. It's painful. Although I can feel a tiny little bit during sex, and I'm grateful for that. I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, and so right as lockdowns and everything was ending, I end up on top of that, so colonoscopies, endoscopies. I end up doing a pill cam endoscopy where you swallow a capsule and it takes photos down your whole digestive system. We found nothing, and it wasn't until the start of last year then I went to my specialist, and I just became the squeaky wheel. I was like, I can't even sit in my wheelchair anymore. And they ended up finding out that I had what's called a perianal fistula. So it's down in my lower bowel. And it's basically where an infection happens, and it creates basically burrows. The infection burrows through the tissue and creates a new little narrow passageway, I guess, from your lower bowel. And I've got 4 of these things going off in different directions that they had to go in and clean them out. And I had 3 surgeries. I had to get a colostomy bag, which I never ever wanted. I always tried to avoid, but it was a necessity. And so, yeah, I spent 3/4 of the year on bed rest, went through all these surgeries. It's still ongoing at this point. I've got another colonoscopy starting next month, probably some more surgeries and everything to address it. But yeah, it's just constant pain that I've been going through, and there could be a bunch of things. I had kidney surgery 3 days ago to get some kidney stones removed. It could be that. It could be something else to do with the colostomy bag and my digestive system. So very much having to explore a lot to try to figure out what's going on, just to try to get back to a point of, reduced pain and being able to live with that. But, I've had some good things to focus on as well. And I don't know if this was going to be the next question, was around the breath hold stuff.
Let's go into the breath hold and the potential for skydiving, and then I want to finish with, if you're willing to talk about it, how you have sex now, because I know it's going to be a great excerpt for TikTok. But let's go. So talk to me about breath holds and obviously you've got this what's the word? You love adventure. You're an extreme sport athlete. Losing that must have been one of the hardest things, but now you're still doing it in your own way with breath holds, free diving, and potentially skydiving coming up. So talk to me about
so that was something. I mean, even obviously with being on a ventilator, I did do a lot of breath work to strengthen my lungs and everything afterwards. And I ended up, when there was that turning point where I stopped looking at what I couldn't do and I started, focusing on what the potential was. That's where I was like, two things: skydiving and scuba diving. Boom. Like, those are two things that I would have a very similar experience to an able-bodied person doing it. And so I called my buddy Jeff and, teed that up. We actually haven't gone skydiving yet, but we're aiming to do it later this year. I actually came over to the Gold Coast because that's where Jeff is located now, and you've obviously jumped and skydived with him before. And he's now been really focusing on, because I went over to do it, but we weren't able to get it done. But he's really focusing on being able to take people with disabilities skydiving now. So looking forward to that. But with the breath hold stuff, it got to the point, so the scuba dive doctor said no. He's like, if you're breathing compressed gas underwater, there's nitrogen bubbles could form in your bloodstream and possibly form on your scar tissue and block the cerebral fluid from flowing. There was a lot to it. Basically, it was a medical issue. He said, you could go out and cowboy it and do it yourself, but you're not going to be able to go through a school without doctor's clearance, which I will not give you. But typical me, finding, hearing some bad news, but I find the loophole. I was like, wait, did you say it was the breathing compressed gas underwater that was the issue? I was like, so if I hold my breath, that eliminates that medical issue. And he's like, realize you can't swim and you'll probably drown, right? I'm like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, I'll figure that part out, but as long as the medical issue's gone. And so that's where I started practicing holding my breath again, just laying in my bed. And within like 3 attempts, I blew past my record from before my accident, which was like 3.5 minutes. And then I kept pushing it, and I ended up linking up with James Fletcher, did Fletcher Techniques, and he's a dude in Australia who's taught me some things to work on with pushing my.
No.
What's that?
Nam Baldwin? No. Nam Baldwin?
No.
Breathwork guy knows.
No, it's Fletch. He just sent me some things to practice, and it just gave me progression again. I can push myself. I can and
something
even
to work towards.
And even something that's semi, not life threatening as such, but it's it's on that kind of edge.
Yeah, for you.
And then I just kept pushing, and I got to the point where I could hold my breath for 5 minutes, 45 seconds was my record, and kind of consistently I can hit 5 minutes. And so we started getting in the pool, and Bob Sovan, one of my old wakeboard buddies, he came over to New Zealand, and him and my buddy Jesse got me in the water and just practiced holding my breath. And I was just face down on the surface, and they swam me a couple lengths of the pool. And I remember hearing Bob go, "Oh, dude, I'm sure we could get you down to 100 feet deep." And that just locked in my mind. I was like, "That's the goal now." So since then, I've been pushing it, and we got into a deep swimming pool, which is like 4.5 meters. Was able to sit down there for about 5 minutes, and I've now done a couple of dives outside of the pool. We did one in the spring in Florida, where I ended up probably 12 meters down. But it was a really, really cool experience. And I think, like, you know, when you get to that point, you just, you know, you can do it. And I think, you know, we were filming for a documentary project we're trying to get happening. And that was just, you've got some beautiful footage from that, and it was such an amazing experience to just be trusted to sit down there. And that was the big thing. It's like my friends are trusting me with my life, and trusting that I'll give them enough time to get me back to the surface. And I love that I have that now. You know, it's given me a little bit of ownership of my life again, and control of that, but also, yeah, just pushing myself, the endorphins that come from it. I think, you know, even being trapped in a wheelchair for almost 9 years now, it's very, you know, it can cause a lot of anxiety, and you feel absolutely trapped. And being able to overcome that has allowed me to overcome stressful situations, like, you know, that feeling of needing to take a breath, when reality is you've still got plenty of oxygen left. It's just your CO2 levels in your lungs getting a bit too high, and that's your body wanting to breathe again. But yeah, there's techniques around, learning to deal with that CO2, and just mentally being able to push past that discomfort. So yeah, it's a goal of mine, is to get to 100 feet deep, somewhat on my own. Obviously have safety divers and stuff around, but yeah, that's part of the goal. And I love that I found something that gave me progression again. It gave me something to focus on, and something to excel at, which I think is pretty cool.
Mate, that's how you go.
I was just going to say, and it just is something I love, being able to be someone that can show others that you can push past these limitations that either we put on ourselves or that society puts on us, and you know, whatever it might be. But just, you know, being able to overcome that and push past that is something that I'm really proud of, and I love being able to kind of push that message.
Love that, man. It's it's just so cool to know that you still have that excitement and something to plan towards. Surely we can get you out behind the boat or on a surfboard one day. Let's put it on the list when you come to Oz.
I've sat on a tube.
You have?
Yeah, and I had Tyler Hyam and Danny Half.
I was going to say, surely we can get a board that's just strapped to the thing and slowly go behind you. And
well, there's that I got offered.
Can you like lift your neck so you can like look up?
Yeah, and so I can look around. So there was that was offered to me to go and sit in this
that would obviously be in the first
adaptive wheelchair, adaptive wakeboard thing. And I was like, no, like, get fucked. I don't want to do that shit. It's like getting a Formula One driver and telling them to sit in the passenger seat of a taxi and go, I have fun. Yeah. You know, it's just not the same. Surfing? But we found, you know, when we sat me in a tube and we got the boys doing tricks over me, like, I just absolutely loved that.
Good on you.
Because it's not like we're trying to replace the thing that I lost, but it's putting me back in that element at least. And you know, being able to have fun with my friends and do that was just so rad, and I want to do it again.
Let's make it a goal when you're in Oz. We'll try and do the boat with Harley and stuff.
Yeah, do the skydive.
And I reckon we can do the skydive, and I reckon we can get, if it's just like a really small day at Lake Crumman, you can hold your breath for bloody 5 minutes. If you fall off, we'll get there eventually.
Push me into a wave.
Yeah, I reckon. Well, even just lie on the back with you and like hug you and ride a wave. Like,
I'm down.
Let's do it. We'll talk to, you know, Barney Miller? We'll talk to
Barney.
him.
Barney's an absolute legend.
I'm going to talk to Barney and we're going to plan it.
And
this
also
summer.
Sam Bloom. So Barney and Sam, both adaptive surfers, and both people I've connected with since the accident, and just absolute legends.
Yeah,
so
Barney's been on the pod.
Love to do that. And then may as well, you know, since I'm over there, we may as well just go freediving as well. Fletcher's there, and get a crew together. And
let's make it a goal this summer.
Yeah.
Epic.
Keen.
Something to work towards. All right, we've only got a few minutes left.
By then, you can finish reading the book.
I will. I would have got to chapter 3. No, I'll definitely have the book.
One thing I did do, though, it is a big book. It's intimidating to look at, but I made it really reader-friendly.
No.
Because I was never a reader, but then I also have to remember, I got all my wakeboard buddies that I want to read this, right? And most wakeboarders probably have a similar report card, you know, would do well if they could pay attention, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so knowing that most of the people, like the wakeboard crew, aren't big readers, I wanted to make it really easy to read in the way that it's written. So
I'm definitely 100% be read by the time you're out there.
Sick.
I'm super excited to get into it. Anyone listening right now, you've brought a couple books for me to give out. I'm going to do a little bit of a competition on social media, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to gift a few of your books.
We'll go on to that last question real quick that you were going to ask around sex, right?
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Damn, I've got 2 questions, so we're going to go a minute or 2 over. So tell me about, all right, how do you have sex now?
So, with the inability to move, I guess you'd say I'm a bit of a starfish. But that's just kind of how it is, and it's good thing is, the tools work to a certain extent. So basically, like, I can get it up, but I can't finish in a way. That is still apparently a possibility, but it's just something, I guess, just like the movement, you just got to practice. And so, I was, I've had a couple of girlfriends since the accident, and been able to explore that a little bit, which has been good. But it is a huge mental challenge, because you're sitting there, you want to reach and touch and grab and hold and move around and get amongst it and everything, but I can't. And so I've had to learn to remove my expectation of, based on what sex used to be. And it's more around connection now. Like, I don't want to have sex with someone for the sake of having sex, because I don't get the pleasure out of it.
Intimacy.
Yeah, it's connection, intimacy. Thank God I loved, and enjoyed giving.
I was about to say, you're probably a great giver.
Yeah,
not much of a receiver.
I can hold my breath for quite a while now too.
Snorkeler.
But yeah, so that was something that I was really glad I was able to still be able to do that and find enjoyment in giving, but also having that little bit of feeling is great. Obviously, visually, it's all amazing. Enjoy that part of it. So yeah, it's just adapting the expectations and beliefs around it, and kind of focusing in on just more about connection and giving and that sort of stuff. Me getting pleasure out of giving pleasure, and so yeah, just kind of working toward potentially being able to finish, I guess. But when it comes to having kids and stuff like that, there's still other options there if that doesn't work. But yeah, so I'm grateful that it's still something. I'll be honest, it's been a dry spell for several years now, and that's semi out of choice. As I said, it's more about connection. I want to really be into the person that I'm doing it with. So
the right one will come when it's meant to be.
Yeah. Excuse the pun.
There you go. Mate, well, this has been an incredible chat. I'm so grateful to get to sit across from you, get to share your story and learn all about it. I am going to read your book, like I said. Everyone should definitely go and grab your book. I'm also going to leave in the show notes. I'm sure there's a way to donate for your documentary that you said you're still trying to raise some money.
We're gonna get some crowdfunding up and running, so it's not running yet, but
okay. When we do, I'll share it through all the socials and everything. I'll leave all your social media, everything in the show notes. People can go on, I guess, your website to book you for speaking. I'm sure you have some agencies.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, this has just been phenomenal. Thank you so much for being so open. Thank you for being vulnerable. I've learned a lot. The last question I do finish every Good Humans podcast with is the same for everyone. Don't know if you've listened to any of the episodes, so you might not know what it's about to come, but what does being a good human mean to Brad Smeele?
I think it's knowing the impact that we can have on others. Like there was a kid I met a few years ago who went through a similar injury. He was quite a bit younger, and his family gave me this picture where it said like just some words painted on it, but it said something along the lines of like, never underestimate the impact that you can have on others. And even on our worst day, we can positively impact someone if we allow ourselves to, and can be vulnerable and open and stuff. So I think just for me, it's about having a positive impact on others, sharing openly, and knowing that we can make an impact on others. And sometimes we don't even know that we are. Like just by going about our day, we might be an inspiration to someone. So for me, that's what it's about, and just growing and learning as we go, and just treating people with respect and kindness, and having that positive impact.
Mate, I absolutely love it. I'm sure you've had an incredibly positive impact on not only my audience right now, everyone who's read your book, everyone who's heard your story, and the outlook you have on life is seriously infectious. So thank you so much for being a guest on Good Humans Podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, mate, and look forward to chatting again down the track.
Absolutely. We will do it.
Awesome.
And we'll go surfing too.
Hell yeah.
Watch this space. There'll be some surf footage of Brad by the end of summer.
Yeah, I reckon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Keen.